Most cruise secrets people talk about are obvious. Avoid the buffet at noon, book early, bring a power strip. But the ones that actually protect your trip, well, those are quieter. And some of them are about your cabin, some are about the first few hours on board. And at least one of them starts before you even reach the terminal. Ignore them, and the whole trip gets harder without you ever knowing why. Number 1. Never board first. Most people believe getting to the terminal early means getting ahead of everyone else. It does not. It means arriving at a ship that is still in the middle of resetting itself after its last voyage. Cabins are not ready when the first wave of passengers boards. Housekeeping is still working. Linens are being changed. Floors are being cleaned. And your room may not be accessible until early afternoon. So you board, and then you stand around. You carry your hand luggage through a ship that is loud with crew movement, trolleys, and impatient passengers all trying to occupy the same spaces at once. The buffet is usually open, but calling it a calm experience at peak early boarding time would be generous. It's crowded, rushed, and often low on items before the kitchens have fully caught their stride. Elevators are a separate problem. Luggage carts, crew deliveries, and passengers all competing for the same lift at the same time turns a 2-deck ride into something you will remember for the wrong reasons. The embarkation photo stations get congested. Check-in areas and security still have stragglers moving through the system. The energy of the ship is not yet the relaxed energy you paid for. It's the transitional energy of a vessel that is not finished preparing for you yet. There are valid reasons to board early. If you have a specialty dining reservation for embarkation lunch or a spa treatment booked at opening, that changes the calculation. But if the only reason is to be first, reconsider. A second wave arrival, when check-in desks are quieter and cabins are genuinely ready, tends to produce a much calmer start to the week. And that first decision matters more than people think, because once you begin the cruise in a rushed, crowded mood, it becomes much easier to make the next mistake too. Number 2. The cheapest cabin can cost you the most. The price of a cruise cabin is not just about what you're paying. It's about what you're living with for the entire trip, night after night, across every port day and sea day on the itinerary. Budget cabins are real savings when the placement is sensible. But when the placement's not, those savings start to feel like a trade-off you were not fully informed about before you booked. Cabins positioned directly under the pool deck are some of the most complained about rooms on any large ship. The sound of chairs being dragged across the deck above, foot traffic from early morning joggers, and occasional mechanical noise from deck equipment travels down in ways the cabin listing does not mention. Pool deck noise tends to start early and run late, which matters a great deal when the days are long and you need sleep to enjoy them. Cabins above the theater, nightclub, or kitchen service corridors have their own set of problems. Late-night performances, bass from sound systems, and the clattering of service operations can be audible through the walls on many ships, depending on how the insulation was constructed. Forward cabins sit at the bow, which is where motion is felt most in rougher sea conditions. For passengers with any sensitivity to movement, a forward cabin in bad weather can turn sleeping into a real challenge. Connecting rooms also deserve attention before booking. The doors linking adjacent cabins are not soundproof, and sound leaks through those connections in ways that feel surprising the first time you encounter them. The smarter approach is to pull up the deck plan after you've identified a cabin category you're comfortable with, and check what sits directly above, below, and beside the specific room. That one step costs 5 minutes and can protect the quality of sleep across the entire cruise. Number 3. The first day is when the ship quietly trains you to spend. Embarkation day feels like freedom. The ship is new, the bars are open, and everything looks like an opportunity. That atmosphere does not appear by accident. Cruise lines invest considerable thought into how the first hours of a voyage are structured. The spa tends to run a raffle or a free consultation offer on day 1. Both lead to the same outcome: a pitch for treatments that can run several $100s. The goal is to reach you when you're relaxed, receptive, and not yet thinking carefully about what the trip is really costing. Drink packages get pushed hard on embarkation day before you've had the chance to understand your actual habits on board. Some passengers drink enough over the course of a week to make a package worthwhile. A significant number do not. The upsell works best when you commit before you have any real data to base your decision on. Specialty dining follows the same logic. Discounts are offered at embarkation to encourage bookings before you've even eaten a single bite in the main dining room. For some ships and some restaurants, the specialty experience is genuinely worth the premium. Agreeing to it within the first 2 hours before you've had any baseline for comparison is how the upsell consistently converts. Photo packages operate on the same principle. On day one, emotions are high and the ship's photographers are positioned at every embarkation milestone. The packages sound reasonable in that moment. They look different when you're reviewing your final bill 7 days later. The first day is for walking the ship, learning the layout, understanding what is already included in your fare, and making no permanent decisions about anything that requires a credit card. Number 4. Your balcony is not as private as it looks. A balcony cabin feels like a meaningful upgrade. More space, natural light, direct access to the air, and the sense that the ocean is right there with you. All of that is real. The assumption of complete privacy is not. The gap between adjacent balconies is smaller than cabin photographs suggest. Voices carry at sea, particularly when the ship is moving and sound bounces off the hull and water in ways that feel counterintuitive. A conversation at what feels like a normal indoor volume can be clearly audible to passengers next door. The same applies to whatever they're discussing at 11 at night. Depending on the deck layout and ship design, crew access routes, maintenance walkways, and the balconies of higher cabin categories above can all provide sightlines you were not accounting for. It's not typically a significant problem, but it is worth knowing the space is not sealed. Wind is the practical discovery most people make on their first afternoon. At sea speed, a balcony generates enough airflow to send papers, hats, and light clothing over the railing without much warning. Items with real value stay inside. There's one safety habit worth building from day one. Always check that the balcony door is properly closed and locked when you leave the cabin and before going to sleep. Balcony doors on ships do not always latch fully on the first push. It takes a second to confirm, and it's worth confirming every time, not out of anxiety, but because it's a simple habit that protects against something that occasionally does go wrong, and the consequences when it does are serious. Number 5. The included food strategy is designed to steer you. Cruise lines generate a significant portion of their onboard revenue from specialty dining, and the way that revenue gets generated is not accidental. The included food is not the enemy. The timing and context in which it is first presented can work against passengers who are not paying attention to it. The buffet on day one of a cruise is one of the most disorganized food environments on the ship. Hundreds of passengers arriving within the same few hours, all hungry, all unfamiliar with the layout, all arriving at the same serving stations at the same time. For passengers whose first real meal impression of the voyage comes from that early buffet, it can set a misleading baseline for what the included food is going to be like all week. The main dining room, at the right time with some basic understanding of how reservations and seating flow, is often a genuinely good experience. Food quality on most major cruise lines is not the problem. Passengers who assume the free option is inferior sometimes never give the included venues a real test, and they spend the week paying extra for specialty meals that are not always as dramatically different from the included options as the price gap implies. There are genuine reasons to book specialty dining. If a particular restaurant has a reputation for being exceptional on a specific ship, and you looked into it before sailing, that's an informed decision made from a position of knowledge. The approach that tends to serve passengers best is using the first 2 days to try the included options at different times and in different venues before committing. Then the decision about specialty dining is one made from actual experience, rather than from anxiety about whether the default is good enough. Now, if you want to cruise smarter, stay with me, because the next few secrets are where ships quietly make your trip more expensive and more inconvenient. And the last one is the kind of mistake people only realize after they get home. Number 6. Port days are when the ship gives you the best value. Every port day, a significant portion of the passengers aboard your ship moves toward the gangway as soon as it opens. That's their choice, and sometimes it's the right one. The assumption that every port stop demands an immediate exit is worth examining before you adopt it automatically. The ship during port hours is a different environment. Pool areas that would normally require patience to find a chair become genuinely comfortable. Slide queues disappear. The gym is nearly empty. Guest services becomes accessible without a wait. The ship you paid for, in full, becomes yours to actually use without the usual competition for space. Some ports reward staying on board for part of the morning rather than rushing to join the first gangway queue. If a shore excursion is booked for the afternoon, spending the morning on a quiet ship is a better experience than queuing at the pier for a tour that doesn't begin until noon. There are also ports where the honest answer is that the ship is the more interesting destination. Not every stop on a cruise itinerary is a place that rewards your full attention from the moment you dock. Some are working ports with a long taxi ride between you and anything worth seeing. Others are genuinely worth exploring, and exploring them properly takes planning rather than instinct. The useful reframe is not simply whether you get off, but why and when. Leaving because there is something specific and worthwhile waiting for you ashore is a sound reason. Leaving because the ship is emptying and staying aboard feels wrong is a less productive one. Number 7. Guest services lines are often avoidable. Guest services is one of those places that becomes its own problem. You go there to solve something, and the experience of waiting in the line often generates more frustration than the original issue that sent you there. The line is longest at specific and predictable moments. Embarkation day brings a surge of passengers with setup questions, missing reservations, and requests that could have been handled before boarding. The evening before disembarkation generates another wave, as passengers realize their bill contains charges they don't recognize. Then add any morning after a billing notification goes out to all cabins, and you have a line that nobody wants to be standing in. Most of those visits are avoidable with timing. Many problems that feel urgent at 10 in the morning are easy to resolve at 2 in the afternoon when the queue's gone. Questions about billing are often addressable through the ship's app or the television system in your cabin. A phone call to guest services from inside your cabin, placed during a quiet midday window, can accomplish in a few minutes what standing in line for 40 minutes accomplishes under worse conditions. The smarter habit is reviewing your onboard account every 2 or 3 days rather than waiting for the final bill to appear. Small discrepancies are easier to dispute while the charges are recent. If a problem genuinely requires an in-person conversation, the timing of that conversation matters as much as what you plan to say. Show up at an off-peak moment, and the whole interaction is different from arriving with the crowd that have the exact same idea at the exact same time. Number 8. Elevators waste more cruise time than people realize. Nobody books a cruise and thinks about elevator strategy. By day 3, most passengers are thinking about little else. Elevators on large ships move a lot of people across a lot of decks, and they do so unevenly. The pressure points are consistent across almost every ship and every sailing. When a show ends in the main theater, every passenger heads for the same bank of elevators at the same time. On embarkation mornings and port mornings, luggage carts compete with passengers for space. Around dinner service, 3 decks of passengers arrive at the elevator lobby within the same 15-minute window. Cabins that require a significant vertical commute to reach any public area create a compounding problem throughout the cruise. Every outing becomes a logistics decision. If the cabin is on deck 4, and the main pool is on deck 15, that gap wears on passengers faster than the brochure photographs suggest it would. Stairs cover 2 or 3 decks in less time than it typically takes to wait for and board an elevator during a busy period. For passengers with any comfort with stairs, this is not a minor convenience tip. It's a genuine time saver that works repeatedly across the week. The cabin selection point matters before you board. A middle deck cabin with reasonable proximity to the ship's core public spaces reduces elevator dependency significantly. It sounds overly specific when you're comparing prices and balcony views, and it becomes quite obvious by midweek when you're waiting 2 minutes for a lift to arrive on a deck. That's not worth 2 minutes of your vacation. Number 9. The bill gets bigger through small, forgettable decisions. Passengers who come home from a cruise with an unexpectedly large bill almost never made one large, obvious mistake. They made a series of small ones, each of which felt trivial at the time. A bottle of water at the pool bar, a coffee from the specialty cafe, a print from the portrait studio that seemed reasonably priced in the moment, a slot machine session that ran longer than intended, room service on a line that charges a delivery fee, a piece of jewelry bought during an onboard sale that felt like a limited window, gratuity added at a rate higher than the passenger expected, a premium spirit selected at the bar because the price difference between brands felt small. None of those individually is a problem. Together, they can add $300 or $400 to a bill that was supposed to be manageable. The mechanism cruise lines rely on is the loosening of spending awareness that comes with being at sea. Cash is removed from the equation. Every purchase goes on the room key. The numbers feel abstract in a way that a wallet full of paper bills never does. The entire transaction system on board is built around that psychological distance. A review of your onboard account on the cabin television or through the ship's app takes about 90 seconds. Doing it every 2 or 3 days rather than once at the end of the sailing changes the outcome reliably. The bill that arrives as a shock on the final morning is always the bill that nobody was watching. The bill you checked regularly rarely surprises anyone. Number 10. The last day starts earlier than most people think. The final evening of a cruise has a particular quality to it. There's often a last dinner, a last drink at the bar that has become familiar across the week, and a general sense that the trip is still fully alive. That sense is mostly an illusion. By the time passengers sit down for their last dinner, the ship has already moved into disembarkation mode. Luggage tags have been distributed. Packing deadlines exist that are not always communicated with the clarity you might hope for. If bags need to be placed outside the cabin door for overnight collection, that window closes at a set time, and missing it means carrying everything through the disembarkation process yourself, which is a different morning than the one you had in mind. The breakfast situation on the final morning depends entirely on what time your disembarkation window falls. Passengers with early windows sometimes realize too late that there's almost no time for a calm last meal. Those who organize documents, confirmed disembarkation times, and finished packing the night before have a different experience from those who left those tasks for the morning. Reviewing the bill before the final night matters for the same reason. Disputes are possible after disembarkation, but they move slowly through customer service from home rather than quickly at a guest services desk a few decks below. A cruise rarely gets ruined by one dramatic moment. It gets weakened by small choices that pile up until the ending feels rushed. The final memory carries a slightly sour edge, and the last morning is stress rather than closure. None of that has to happen, and it usually only does when the night before it was treated as if the cruise was still somewhere in the middle. That is how smarter cruisers protect the trip before problems start. Like and subscribe if you want more cruise advice that actually saves you money and stress. Click the video on screen for the next breakdown. The best cruise experience starts before you sail. Your voyage is just beginning.